So we're just gonna act as if we're gonna extend this to the perfect.
I was trying to,
We're gonna make more of the space and just, you know.
All right, it's 12 o'clock. We'll get the infrastructure committee meeting rolling. Roll call, Melissa.
Steve Brenner.
Here.
Keith Durr.
Here.
Jen Weimer. Here. Fred Moble will be absent. And Dave Reeser.
Here.
Is there any public comment? Dave?
Dave Becker, Lincoln Avenue, 1800 block. Couple things I want to bring to the attention, mainly the new house being constructed, 1851 Lincoln. It's been, the lawn's been rough graded a couple months ago, and that's where it sits. Hasn't been seeded, no silt fence. It's on the hill. It's been washing mud into Lincoln Avenue. Sunday a week ago, at several places, probably 3 inches of mud, and that's getting tracked into the neighbor's driveway. The whole 1800 block is a muddy mess. The sidewalk is open, but it hasn't been backfilled, so somebody steps off, they could probably sustain an injury. 3 different places on the sidewalk has been mud covered, not cleaned off. And the other thing is, it's time for them to cut the grass again. The front yard is turning into weeds. Some of them are pushing 2 foot tall now. About 6 weeks maybe, I called Craft Code Services. They came out and had them cut, say, the back of the property. But since then, since it's only like a rough grading, you know, anything and everything is growing but grass. And like I said, there's no silt fence. It's washing into the street, which means it's washing into the storm sewer. And that brings me to my second thing is, about 5 years ago, there was talk about cleaning that big drainage pipe. It's about a 5x7 oval pipe. And to date, nothing has been done yet. And I'm just wondering if that's on the books yet. I know the past rain Sunday a week ago, the home zone, I'm gonna say the pipe side of Lincoln, had a substantial amount of water in the backyards. I don't know if it's because the pipe couldn't handle it, or if their drainage in the backyard isn't big enough to handle it. But either way, I think the mud washing from 1851 should be looked into, because that is ending up in that pipe, adding more silt in that pipe. So I don't know where we're at with cleaning that pipe. I think it was federal money that was going to be allocated to do that. State money. So if anybody can give me any answers anytime, I would appreciate that. And if somebody could maybe look into 1851, myself and the neighbors would appreciate that. Thank you.
I can either respond to him after the meeting, or I can give an update now on pretty much all of that.
Go ahead.
Regarding the mud washing out, that's the conservation district. I can get you the phone number to contact, but they control ENS approval and containing that erosion and sediment to the site, and then come out and take enforcement action against the owner if it's not being maintained. Craft did notify me back on June 13th that they had posted the property for grass and weeds. It was not taken care of. In that case, we have a contractor, a landscaping contractor we work with. I notified them on June 19th. They went out and they did cut. I had asked them to put it on a 3-week rotation, so I'm not sure if they got tied up, but I'll remind them to keep cutting that one until further notice.
Okay, but they need to look in the front yard now too, because that's, hasn't been seeded or final graded or nothing. It's only a rough grade, and any seed that lands there is going to grow, and there's some stuff pushing 2 feet high out in the front.
Okay, and regarding the Brandywine Lincoln stormwater pipe, we did apply for state funding. We've applied for state funding for that, I believe, 3 times now through separate grant programs, and have yet to get it. It's a total of almost $2 million project. Phase 1 would be $1 million, so we asked for $500,000. So That is actually, our grant application for this year is in submission. The Commonwealth Financing Authority, who weighs in on those grants, won't meet until, at this point, did we get an approved state budget yet? No.
No.
So the July CFA meeting's gonna be canceled, which means that'll get punted to August or September, so.
On a positive note on that, a year or two ago, Jim's guys cut some new catch basins and piped into Lincoln and Brandywine. And from what I hear, that has really been helping a lot.
So if there's mud going down the streets, we have nothing to do with it?
Conservation District that comes out, cause they approve their ENS permit.
Are we responsible for it, or is the?
Property,
Who,
property owners.
so if the property owner doesn't do it, because the state hasn't done it, we just have to go to the property owner?
You talking about the mud?
Yeah.
Yes. No, we don't go to the property owner. We have we have an agreement with the Conservation District, and we've delegated all those inspections and enforcement activities to Berkshire County Conservation District. So,
If they don't do
The complaint.
anything, what's his recourse?
keep calling them. Why would they not do anything? That's what they do. That's all they do.
We expect them to do something.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
So
I'm,
he needs to-
We're expecting them.
well, I mean, if somebody calls them, 372-4657 is their phone number. If you call them, they're coming out. I mean, that's all they do. That's their job.
So make sure we get the phone number.
It's not like calling DEP and they won't come out. They'll be here that day or the next day.
Okay.
Do you have it memorized, what was it again?
372-4657.
I'll email it to you.
I got it from you.
I'm gonna call it a few times over the decades.
Now, as far as silt fence, Joe, is that?
And again, we have no authority over an erosion control project, an earth disturbance that's over 5,000 square feet. It's 100% on the Conservation District. We could go out there and tell them whatever we wanna do, we have no authority to tell them. So we don't do it, it's a waste of our time, it just complicates matters.
That's countywide, any municipality.
That's statewide.
Statewide?
The only thing we have authority over as a borough is something under 5,000 square feet that doesn't require to go to them to get a letter of adequacy. But you require them pretty much everything, don't you?
And they're
Under
required
over 5?
to submit a copy of that
There's
county
supposed to follow
conservation
best
district
management.
approval letter as part of their building permit application, to show that they went to the county and got approval.
And the ones that are under 5,000 square feet, they're supposed to have a plan, they don't have to get it approved though, and follow all the state guidelines, but they're not required to actually get it approved.
Just because I'm curious, any mud that goes into the road, that's not responsibility of the borough either?
I'm not an attorney, I can't, we don't have enforcement power
I
over
could
it.
sure-
I'm sure we could sue them for the cost to remove the mud from our road.
If they're causing a hazard on the roadway, we could go after the property owner. Not for the mud, not for the erosion, but for the hazardous condition of the road.
Who would determine the
Clean it
hazardous
up and
condition?
bill them for it, or
What's
what?
that?
What's the point of the lawsuit? Would we remediate and bill them for it, or do you want, do you want
They can
a?
find it.
I would assuming, depending how hazardous, we could potentially clean it up and work with the conservation district to get the documentation that they were out there to inspect as well, and then bill the owner.
Okay.
And the hazardous condition is pretty substantial. I mean, if it's on a hill and you can't get traction to go up the hill, that's a hazard. You know, if it's on a flat roadway and it's only an inch deep, it's probably a nuisance, but not a hazard. I mean, so it's subjective.
Mud on the sidewalk, that could be a slip and fall, would that be considered hazardous?
I'd have to see if we have an applicable regulation.
So is your new neighbor at odds with you, or he's just doing his thing?
It's a spec home. And I don't live next to the house, but now I live on the 1800 block, and it's getting mud on that, goes to the street.
Follow up, make sure we're getting that under control the best we can. Any other public comment?
the cats. Hi, my name is Leslie Turner. I live at 1400 Dauphin Avenue. This is my neighbor Sue, also in the 1400 block. We need help dealing with Lisa Gerard, a known cat hoarder. She's done this multiple times. Past status quo enforcement has not worked. The ARL suggested to me that we request that the council revisit the ordinance and more strictly enforce it, as well as possibly upgrade it to, you know, when I talked to Kraft, they said that she has 30 days to rectify. Well, by that time, you've got more cats. Like, it needs to be quicker. I don't know if you saw in the news just this morning about a bunch of rabbits that were released in a neighborhood in Florida. I mean, this is going on all over the country. I don't want it to get out of control. So, also, we have no interest in, you know, hurting Lisa in any way. We want her looked after. I found out last week when I was dropping off cats that the ARL, the Animal Rescue League, has to enter her house with a respirator. That cannot be healthy for her either. That, to me, I'm hoping constitutes a danger to her, and possibly she used to have a guardian, and I'd like to understand why that stopped, and if we can re-implement that. I want to encourage, you know, help her live on her own, but in a safe manner where she's not a danger to us. I have a letter from one of her neighbors that I'd like to submit. She's submitting it anonymously because she's afraid of Lisa. She's done things according to the letter. She's put feces on her car, screamed at her obscenities when she's sitting out in her yard, just having a glass of wine with her husband and talking to her children. She can't have anyone over anymore because you have this horrible situation where this woman is screaming obscenities at you just because you're sitting out in your yard, on top of the cats being. So I'd like to submit this. I don't know who to give it to. And so we're asking for your help.
I have an update on that too, whether you want me, I was gonna do it under zoning and code.
Let's just do that under, we are gonna touch on that under I think the next topic, so. Any other public comment? Mr. J?
Just wanted, you know, based on what I've heard, to raise a little bit of awareness. We've had what I understand it was called a 1,000-year rainfall. There are problems all over the borough. Wyomissing Boulevard was covered with stones after that rain. Debris are coming from all over. I think that we have to pause a little bit and think about, and I understand that happens. I know I have the same problem. Houses on a hill will, you know, stuff rolls downhill. So I think that we have to pause and think about what's going on. If the asphalt comes out, are we gonna blame someone from uphill? If we have stones all over Wyomissing Boulevard, what we're doing, we're starting now to trace back where those stones are coming from. And I have a picture of it. It was right across from Atonement Church. It was just a lot. I would call that a hazard. And I think we have to look as a community at all these situations because the rains are gonna become a reality. I think these types of rains. So the other thing, we have a problem on our street, and I brought that up way back, and these are not legal anymore. People would fill up the roll-up curb in front of their driveways with asphalt. What happens with that, and we have several neighbors who do that, who have that, I'm sorry. It deflects, so the water that would normally stain the gutter is deflected down to the middle of the street because of them filling the gutter with asphalt. Again, I know this is a grandfather thing, but with these rains, this becomes a problem because all the debris are shot in the middle of the street, creating a problem. I brought that up several times with Michelle. And I think we have to look at these issues. It's not the one fix for all, but first of all, let's not shoot them in the middle of the street because of some construction and some old concepts that are not valid anymore. Maybe we can look into that. I asked when we asphalted the street, when we pave the street, I said, can we remove those? Because that is a problem. The gutter needs to, all the debris, everything that goes down. Then we can deal, after we deal with the issue of them being shut in the middle of the street, becoming a hazard. If they're in the gutter, well, that's one good step. Then we can look at, okay, the drainage and other things. So that's my advice. I think we have to look more, as a whole, at the whole picture, not just, starting pointing neighbor that, neighbor this, because I don't think that's constructive. I think we have to look at it. And I understand the point, but I also understand that there are many aspects. Thank you.
Any other public comment? Hearing none, let's move on to the zoning and codes report.
The report itself is pretty self-explanatory. To get into Kraft's report specifically, there are 5 properties noted in the report that were posted for unsafe notice to vacate. Those are for water shutoffs, so people that didn't pay their water bill. Violation of building code and the property maintenance code not to be connected to public water and sewer. So when we shut off, we also post. Just because that information wasn't on the report, I didn't want anyone to be looking at it. Yeah, wondering what was.
I was like, that's a lot.
Yeah. There were also 10 properties noted that there was a clerical error. 5 of those 10 were the properties that were unsafe notice to vacate, which were posted before the letters were mailed out. It's my understanding that we were not charged any type of postage. The original letters did not get sent out at all until July. And there was an issue on the template that the person was using that had Pat still as the borough manager, which is why they were not sent out. To touch on the cat issue, I reached out to Alexis Pugalatos, who is the executive director of the ARL last week after council. She put me in touch with Hayden Carroll, who is one of their, what's the actual title? He's an animal control officer. So he sent a very lengthy and informative email, which I will gladly forward out to the committee and council if you'd like to read it. The short version is that what they're recommending more than anything that we do in regards to amending our ordinance is promote responsible maintenance of community cat populations, to advertise and support the trap neuter release program, and focus legislation and efforts on parties that may interfere with such actions. So, I think Chris and I need to sit down and talk about what that looks like before we could draft something. Clearly trying to enforce animals running at large by adding cats, they're suggesting we not do that. It actually becomes more of a burden against the people that are trying to help with the trap neuter release program. In some of the issues that Crafts ran up against, they can't just force their way into the property unless the owner will allow them entry to check on the sanitation conditions. Clearly, she is not allowing them in. So without either a copy of the ARL, a fire department, or a police officer's statement that they've gone into the property and observed the conditions themselves, there's no way they're gonna get a search warrant. And that's the only way the borough is getting inside the property right now to deal with anything on the inside. In terms of the guardian, that I'm guessing was court appointed. We, the borough, have nothing to do with that. I did speak to that gentleman a few years ago, and he did express that he had concerns about her health, some other things, but he said she would be pissed at me if she even knew I was talking to. He wouldn't give me his name, he would not give me any contact information. So it sounds like the ARL is attempting to deal with her the best that they can through all the legal channels that they have. I know Kraft is doing the same. I did forward Sergeant Carroll's email to Jeff, I believe it was Friday night, and asked that maybe him, Joe, Chris, and I sit down and come up with some ways. The one thing they do note in here, they did observe the rear door located on her lower floor was propped open, appearing in such a way as to allow felines to freely enter and exit her residence. That in and of itself, we can't do anything about, but under the urination and defecation on other property, which is what I cited her for previously, I think that may be something we might be able to go after. But all of that is gonna be subject to Judge Taylor's sympathy when we're in his courtroom eventually, and where he goes with that. So, I mean, at this point, I would say Kraft continues to be involved, the Arrow clearly continues to be involved. Kudos to the two of you for what you've been doing and are continuing.
It's exhausting.
I believe it. And let the solicitor and I with Kraft kind of sit down and look at what else is out there, maybe in other municipalities that we could kind of cherry pick from to craft something that works specific to the situation here.
So short-term, basically, these people have no recourse.
That's, thank you, that's,
So to get the search warrant, we have to get information to DJ Taylor?
No,
You?
but coming from you, it has to
we
be
need it
coming.
from the ARL.
Well,
The
that's what
ARL,
I'm
a police officer, you know,
Somebody
I've used reports from the
witnessed it.
fire department, I mean, there has to be a justification.
So you can't do a welfare check, like we send a cop in to do a welfare check on this individual, just
Not
to
if she
say-
doesn't let him in.
Even if she's leaving cat feces on people's cars.
Well, that you should be calling the police
That's what I
department
told
about.
the neighbor that
Yeah.
happened to.
Same thing with her swearing obscenities, I
Yeah.
mean, she should be calling the police department at
I
that
agree.
point.
Well, us trapping has really set her off. She's
She's
really angry
Roaming
about
the
us trapping.
streets,
And
screaming.
that's kind of what Sergeant Carroll's
Right.
email said as well, that she's gotten combative with them and is now kind of taking it to the next level. So, I mean, whether it's a police officer or anybody else, if they knock on the door and she says, no, you can't come in, they can't come in without a
So
search
what if the
warrant.
neighbors just keep calling the cops?
For-
Like every 3 times a day?
For,
She put a feces there, they have a weird smell,
There is a weird
somebody
smell,
yelled at
and
them,
it's 3
for all
houses
kinds of
away.
reasons. Just keep calling the cops.
Yeah, the odor is terrible. I mean, on both
It
sides, I can't.
Brings tears to your
yeah.
eyes.
Jeff's telling me he walks the property at least once a week, not just the property, the entire block, and he's saying he's never smelled anything.
It depends on the wind direction. I'm out there
So we do
trapping,
have
I can
documentation
smell
of
it.
over 4 though in that letter.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing
And
we
we
could
haven't
potentially
had
cite her for is she's keeping more than 4 of one type of animal. But, I mean, again, the way the ordinance is written, there are specific time periods we have to give for compliance, it's not just here you go, comply
What
now.
recourse does the borough have if we have documentation that she's having more than 4 of one?
We can issue an enforcement notice for keeping more
What's the
than
proof?
the allowable number of cats.
And how are we supposed to know she has more than 4 cats?
Cause the ARL sent me an email claiming, well, stating, they've witnessed that.
But they've witnessed it, but who enforces the fact that you can go out and catch these? No, I understand what you
Paperwork
have.
on the 7 I'm trapped.
So whose job is it to go pick up 5 cats?
We've been doing it.
No, I know you are, but that's why you're here, because you don't want to be in the cat
No,
collection business.
I hope I don't look like a cat trapper,
The
because I'm
zoning
not.
ordinance doesn't
would be
provide for us
it's
to
the-
remove the cats.
It's the animal, it's actually chapter 2, we have a whole ordinance specific to animals and keeping animals, and types of animals
But
and.
there's
And she's
penalties if
breeding.
you exceed the limits. But, does that ordinance provide that we can remove the animals?
No.
I don't think it does.
No.
It's just fines if you exceed the limits.
Yes.
So if you don't know how many are there, how do you know she's exceeded the limit? And then if she's exceeded the limit, who goes and gets the cats?
I mean, this email is
We don't
stating
have
on
the right
July
to get
eleventh, a
cats.
total of
It's
11
her responsibility
felines.
to remove, to get.
Who's responsible?
We don't
The
get
owner's
the cats.
responsibility.
She
She's
just
not
pays,
doing it.
it's,
That's why
she
they're
pays
doing
money.
It's not,
She
it's not
pays
much
money,
different
that's
than
the
a
problem.
property maintenance code.
Yeah.
You
she
cite
pays.
them, you give them time to correct it, if they don't correct it, then
You're
you
back
can
to
issue a
square
one.
citation.
Isn't
that what
But
happened
even after the
before?
citation,
She cited
we
her,
go
she
back
paid
to the
the
beginning
fine,
again. It's a
Now we're
cycle.
back to
It's
square
a
one.
vicious cycle.
But it sounds like
Right.
there's more issues than just 4 cats. It sounds like
Well, yeah.
you've got a nuisance issue with an individual who's combative, who's doing destructive things to other people's
There's
property.
Multiple issues.
Does, if we were able to impose a fine for having more than 4 of one particular animal, does that get in front of the district justice faster than any other thing that we're doing? Because that's the case.
Well, I mean,
Process was started already.
yes, I mean, there's a compliance period that goes along with that based
How would we
in the
prove
ordinance.
compliance then?
Well, I mean, to me, she voluntarily allows
Yeah.
us in to see it, and if she doesn't, we're assuming you're guilty and we're filing.
But there has to be, I mean, there's
Well,
12
you need
really smart
files.
people around this table.
She
There's
usually
gotta
let
be
the
2
girls
or
out
3 police
before she
officers.
went, and now
Or Chris and somebody else. that
She,
can
so there's some
figure out
mental health issues going on here.
Well,
Um,
There's another ordinance that we've used.
I don't,
And what is that?
having been in court with her where
One of
she
the
testified that the
issues-
cats were teleporting.
Okay.
I mean, I think she's not, yeah,
that's the other one.
I don't think she cares about the cats apparently too much. I think in some cases to just set them free and say, okay, now I'm in compliance, you can come, I don't see that happening based off my prior dealings with her, but.
One of the issues that comes up is that when you base the enforcement on keeping too many animals, then the rebuttal is that they aren't my animals, they're, community. So one of the strategies we've used in some other communities is to enact an ordinance that prohibits the feeding of community cats unless you are signed up with a trap, neuter, release program. And people have to have proof that they are participating in that kind of program in order to be eligible to feed community cats. So in other words, they can only feed cats as part of the trapping process or that they're already neutered. Enforcement is always a challenge, and with this individual, it's gonna
Always.
be another problem. But I think what you would get with this ordinance is to remove the rebuttal to the existing regulation about they're not really my cats. They just come and go. And so if you can cut off that rebuttal, at least you have a little bit stronger legal position, even though you're still gonna have the battle of this person's behavior. And, obviously there's a mental health issue in this, and we have very limited tools to manage mental health. So, it's like any property maintenance case where people are not taking care of themselves or their property, it's very difficult to manage.
Can't we write a letter to somebody? I mean, obviously it's a mental health issue. Caused by whatever, it doesn't matter. Isn't there something that borough can write a letter to somebody saying, hey, here's this person here that's really needs some help?
She's not old enough, in my understanding, to qualify the department, like the Office of Aging getting involved.
She's 71. She
Oh, is
old
she?
enough,
Oh,
yes.
then the
Well,
opposite of the-
she's
the
older.
opposite of the
I
aging.
contacted them
She's
and
not
they
old.
are of the opinion, my exact quote is unless she is a danger to herself or others, they can't do anything, so you always run up against that.
Well, they has to use a respirator to help them.
That's what I'm hoping, the respirator that I heard
Yeah,
about
if they have
last
to use a
week.
respirator to walk in, then she is a danger to
If
herself.
she called
She shouldn't be in
911
there
for a heart
you.
attack, they would have to enter her place and put their lives at risk going in her home. So that's what I was hoping would help get into the homes at least, because these are the 11 cats that the ARL, they told me, those are only the ones that we can see. These are feral cats and they're very good at hiding. They estimate when they find 11, there's at least twice that.
And they're in the house, or they're,
They're in it, they're free to go.
In and
free
out.
to
They come and go.
So,
I've asked the ARL for a copy of their report because I think that would go a long way in getting us a search warrant, but I have yet to receive anything.
To use the other ordinance that you were talking about, in other words, not feeding feral cats, how do we enforce that? Like,
The ARL.
It's the same issue. We would need evidence and we'd have to prosecute, and you're gonna get fines potentially, but it's hard to manage the behavior. You just create a pile of bills for the person to pay. And it doesn't really modify their behavior unless they are susceptible to that financial pressure that you get from the fines. But the point of the ordinance is just to cut off that rebuttal on the other issue.
So to do that, we have to draft an ordinance, we have to advertise the ordinance. So we're still staring at 2.5 months at best.
and that's still not gonna solve the problem, right?
No, the problem is it's her. You gotta do something about her. The ARL, all you do is collect the cats and bring them back. That's not the problem. The basic problem is her.
So
deal
under
with
what
facts, not with people.
circumstances would we have, or the borough have, from a law enforcement perspective, the ability to go in and say, this person isn't in a safe situation? If the neighbors call and say, I think this lady's hurting herself, I mean, under what circumstances do we send a cop there once a day and knock on the door and try to resolve it? Lawyer people?
Well, are we suggesting the board members
What the Nazis tried.
to take action against someone
That's what the Nazis tried,
dogs, cats?
to get people out based on.
But not against.
Gotta be careful.
Hold on, we got,
I understand, I'm not saying.
folks, we got a lot of conversations going on. Go ahead.
If we're able to get our people, wherever they are, craft, police, there to the house, and round up 15 cats, that's a good start. What do we do now that we got rid of 15 cats? They come back the next day and get 15 more? We can do that. But what do we do after we catch 15 cats? What
Well,
do we do?
apparently it doesn't do any good, because we were ready to take this person to court several years ago, and the situation just came right back. So it sounds like we've got the ordinances aren't gonna fix this, because obviously you've got an individual who's making the lives of their neighbors
So are
miserable.
we allowed to have her arrested?
I don't know, that's what I'm asking the lawyer people, because these people live in a neighborhood
So that, I'm asking.
that's affecting their life.
What we arrest her?
What crime?
Yeah, what if you arrest him?
I don't know. Is there something?
They're a nuisance.
Is there
They're
something
a
on the
nuisance
books
ordinance.
here in the borough?
It's not criminal, it's a code violation, not criminal.
Could we get in touch with the trust that
We don't know, he died.
I have no idea who that is. I have no
I
contact.
think you can find out.
I'm gonna text
How?
Lisa Hartline and ask whether
I
there's
think he
some way to
works for
find out who's
Stevenson
who's
Lee.
the guardian.
Right, she must have a guardian she's running a trust.
Right.
I believe he works for Stevenson Lee.
But generally,
But I don't know who it is.
filings in the orphans court are
Confidential,
confidential
sealed.
in contrast to that's all I asked Lisa.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the way you have to take her first.
She needs help.
She needs help.
She needs help.
We are around and just keep collecting cats and come back. It's a big-
Listen, obviously, if she is putting cat feces on someone else's car, that's gotta get reported to the police as fast as possible.
And you can't have a guest, she yells at people for parking on the street, it's public parking.
Yeah.
If they're too close to her car, well, we're all too close to everybody's car, like it's parallel parking.
Yeah.
So
Call
it's
the
just,
cops.
and people have, and so just unfortunately, there's this sort of learned helplessness that has now descended upon the neighborhood. Because when they've called in the past, one neighbor actually was gathering up her leaves, had a pile of leaves, and apparently was cited for her pile of leaves when she called about an issue with Lisa. And she's like, I'm never calling again. It's like, I called to get this problem, I'm in the middle of cleaning my leaves and I get cited? What's that? So this
Cited?
is what I'm dealing, she
Said by
was,
who?
apparently whoever came out to look at the problem said you are in fire violation for having a pile of leaves in your yard. That she hadn't had a chance to.
That sounds highly unlikely.
Yeah.
Well, this is the person, she's a mental health professional, she is very, this is what I'm running into too, I ask my neighbors to write letters, they're afraid to put their names to it because they've had interactions that have scared them in the past with Lisa. So it's going to be really hard, you know, you asked, I think, gentleman at the end, I'm sorry, I don't know your name, you asked for videos or pictures, I think, last time. People are afraid to provide evidence because they don't want it to be public record that they reported her, because in the past, she has targeted people, with screaming and knocking on their doors, and so it's really become quite an issue, and
Have a neighbor like that.
I can't believe.
It seems to me like if we have codes people, police department, Chris, those three organizations should be able to find a way out of this mess without us doing this for the next 3 days, just to be right where we are now. None of us do this for a living. These three people do this for a living. Codes, lawyers, police. Figure it out. If we need an ordinance, then we need an ordinance. If we have an ordinance, let's enforce it. If she can be arrested, let's arrest her. We don't know the answer.
Not hearing anything, anybody giving a suggestion on how to.
Exactly.
That's,
We don't
Well,
have.
and
this isn't a
How to
problem
fix it.
Unique to us.
unique to us or this woman. You know, we represent 19 municipalities, all 19 have one resident like this. We have one in Kenhurst that puts off the fire alarm 7 times a day. We can't leave, we try to leave the fire alarm connected and we can't disconnect it, we can't. Because if she has an actual fire, dies, then we're liable. So the only thing we're able to do is Ken Hurst put the surrounding fire departments on, don't you respond, and we go. This has been on for 7 years. 7 times a day, the fire alarm going off and they have to respond. And she's of a similar mindset as this woman with the neighbors doing crazy things where.
The first thing we need is a record of everything. So if she says anything to anyone, despite whether the police can do anything or not, they need to be called so that a report is written, so it's documented that this has happened or that has happened, every single time.
Anonymously, because people are scared of her.
So the problem is, at the end of the day, like, say you send us a video of a cat coming off of her property, entering yours, doing its business, and going back. You shot that video, not someone else, therefore for us to actually move forward with going to the district justice office, the person that shot that video is gonna have to be able to be subpoenaed and testify and say, I shot this, I witnessed it. That's the only way I was successful before prosecuting her, is a neighbor was willing to be subpoenaed and come and testify, otherwise it's hearsay.
We are all, is there a way, again, to do this anonymously that it's not very?
You can report the information anonymously, but once we get to the court part, you're gonna have to stand up in court and say, I so-and-so.
So I think we need a
Recorded
meeting
this
with the
video.
block to have everybody on the same page, and if we're all in it together, hopefully the fear factor goes down.
If we call the police when these things happen, is that enough? Like, will the police come out and then just leave us out of it, or?
No, they would have to file under information received, and your name
Okay.
would have to be used.
But we
Because-
need
because
those
the
records
officer-
in order to
Because
have
the officer did not
evidence.
witness it himself.
Right.
It's at least a start.
And then there is the
But as a
recording issue.
group, you have to understand that this woman appears to be mentally unstable. She's 71
And
years
she's
old.
escalating.
You guys can't be scared of her. You
And
need
she,
to
in the
find a way
past,
to
she
fix the problem and
has
help
done
her.
things to people's car, like put branches and stuff, and just, I mean, she
Does shake my car.
yeah, she gets angry and will take it out on
Do
you.
the police know about any of this?
I have no proof that I didn't see her do it, but who else would have duct taped my
No,
car?
that's
All right,
not good.
let's,
An hour after I talked, she talked
Yeah,
to
we're
me.
just going on.
we're gonna kill this thing, no pun intended, so, let's see what we need to do to be able to at least create somewhere down the road a parachute that we can catch, no pun intended either, use it the best, to have an argument with district justice.
If we have a draft ordinance, does it have to come back to infrastructure, or if we get it before the next council meeting, can it go to council?
It's gotta get it advertised, and it's gotta get.
But
You could, we could
I
make a
wanna skip the
direct
next
response.
infrastructure.
Oh, yeah.
So, but the ordinance isn't gonna solve their immediate
Right.
problem. So
No,
what
but it
do we
helps.
tell
I don't
these
think
people?
it's gonna solve
What do we
the
tell
problem
these
either.
people? What do we tell them to do?
Call the police.
Is that what we should tell them to do? Call the police?
And I'm
As a-
working with the ARO, so.
So I mean, that sounds like what you need to do is, my suggestion would be to keep calling them so that, like Jen said, that there's continued documentation.
Is there a way that we can prove, how can we prove that she has more than 4 cats, assuming she does have more than 4 cats?
I mean, I have the email from the ARL officer stating the number that they took out on a specific day. The cats that were left that are pregnant and or have already had kittens, so I think from his email, we have enough documentation to issue an enforcement notice that she's keeping more than 4.
No, the police have to pick up 10 cats when they go there, take a picture
Ron,
of
they
them.
don't pick up.
Good luck.
They
Pick-
can't pick up the cat.
Why
They're
not?
not picking up cats.
They run
All
fast.
right, keep going. Can we listen to Michelle, please?
Issue the enforcement notice that based off of documentation and statements provided to us by the ARL, we, fully believe you were keeping more than 4 cats as permitted under the animal ordinance. You have whatever the time period in that ordinance is to remove all but 4, provide proof to the borough by allowing an inspection of the interior of your property by such and such date, or here's the penalty for failure to comply.
So that,
So that date comes,
can we go
she-
and follow? Can we
she
follow
either
up
lets
and
us
do
in
that?
or she doesn't, and if she doesn't, we're filing under the assumption you haven't proven to us you got rid of more than 4.
Well, I think we gotta start somewhere. I mean, I feel horrible because there's only so much you can do and it's total bureaucracy, I understand, but it's the way our world works. So let's see if we can file it that way, let's work, see if the ordinance will help traffic, give us another trap later on down the road.
Do you have, you said Stevens, do you have a name of somebody?
No, she had a guardian years ago who passed away, and I don't know who the new one is, and they won't give me the information, so
Does
I
the
don't know.
borough have the means to find out who the guardian is?
I still think that, you gotta do that.
Or if the borough should do it.
Working group records received.
Okay. Alright.
But maybe also get your, like you suggested, get the whole block together so you don't have that fear factor and
We're
complain
helping.
as a complain as a group.
We're working on them, and
Complain as a
it
group.
is working.
One at a time, we're convincing
I mean,
them,
I'm the
so.
big target now, because I'm the one doing the trapping, so, you know, that should take the heat off everyone else.
Michelle, we'll get one last thing. See who's paying her water bill.
We were actually gonna look at the taxes too.
Yeah, see where that's coming from.
I think a trust is paying that.
Yeah.
Well, it's a place to start.
It's got a name and address and.
Well,
yeah,
right,
yeah,
that's what
yeah.
I'm saying, but you gotta go after them and get them working.
In the meantime, I think we should
What will be
continue
the
forward
house?
with
Well,
what the
I don't
evidence
know what
that
to
we have.
do, but this.
We'll work on the code, work on the ordinance, we'll fast track the ordinance if it's agreeable to the council. But at the end of the day, that's still weeks and months down the road.
We understand.
It's the best we can do at this point, but, yeah, let's see if we can track her down for the other side of things there.
That's what I.
Okay.
Okay, we really appreciate your time. And would someone at some point follow up with us?
Yep.
We give you a number? Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks for coming again.
Yes.
All right, moving on. Any other things we need to talk about here?
Unless there's anything pressing, somebody has a question about.
Can I just quick ask the water with the shutdowns? Is that because of unpaid bills, or do we know, or did these people just decide to shut their water out?
Oh, it's all unpaid bills.
It's just all
So
unpaid
they
bills.
get
So their
first,
water gets
second,
shut off
third
now
and
we-
final, then
Okay.
another posted on their door that they have 24 hours to pay, and then we shut off.
Will people actually live in there?
I guess it's the other-
Based off of what I can recall from the address list, no. The ones where somebody was living paid after it was shut off, and I think before it actually closed it.
Okay. We good with zoning codes report?
Yep.
All right, Western Berks Water Authority.
As we speak, the EPA audit team is in doing an audit today, and I'm gonna go to the closing meeting later on today. Regarding Warren Street, again, we're not the ground, raw water owns the pipe, so, they've submitted to PennDOT on June 20th, I believe, the engineering report, and we've not heard anything since, so.
As of today, I think it's been 4 weeks that the DEP's had the
So,
application.
but in case of an emergency, Rawa did say they could supply emergency water if we needed it, so that's where we stand with that.
That's what they always say, isn't it?
Okay.
What can I do?
Hope it's true.
We aren't we're not the movers on that. Yeah, it's
No, understood.
Rawa's
I
fine.
And
appreciate
there's
it.
no shutdown date right now, right?
No.
Okay.
So everything else is fine.
And underwater, Jim? Awarded contract, I know that.
Yeah, there'll be, one more final payment application for them. Jim has done a change order to consolidate the final invoice. Suburban Testing Labs, we, through Western Berks, we use Suburban Testing Labs to do our DEP samples. And over the course of the last year, we've had 2 positive coliform hits that I think were bogus. And then this, just Thursday, when they came to do a chlorine sample, at the one location is at our garage, they basically said there's no chlorine here, which is a violation. And I knew it couldn't be. And I asked Matt at Western Berks to send one of the Western Berks Labs guys down Friday to test it again. And he said, yeah, your chlorine's fine. It was like 1.5 or so. I forget the exact number, but it was fine. And they look at the garbage can, and the test packet of chemicals they used to do this was the wrong type. That's why she was getting no chlorine. So I just wanted to let the committee know I'm going to terminate Suburban Testing Labs, and there's an alternative MJ Ryder over in Jones, and start using them, because we have to report all these things as violations at some point, and they're not true.
So Suburban's a problem.
Yes.
And I see if we
And item C, that lead roll, this is more of a budgetary thing. The further we get into this, it's, as I had said before, it's too overwhelming. I spoke to 2 engineering firms that do this, the 2 and Entech, and I'm going to be putting in the budget some money for them to assist us in report on inventorying and reporting the correct way for the DEP to understand. It's just too much for any small municipality. We can surely help, but we would hire them on an hourly basis to assist us with input and be more on that at budget time.
Okay. And sanitary sewer?
A ton of stuff in sanitation. There's a payment application number 2 for sewer specialties. We should approve.
The correct amount is actually $64,602.20. There's a second invoice. Bill's clued me into it this morning.
If that wasn't associated, that was
7,600, she said on top of the
but,
57.
Yeah, but show me the invoice again. I
So
know
there's-
which invoice she's talking about.
There's 57, and
Yeah.
then there's.
That was a lot, I mean, we could include, but that was not part of the original scope of this
Gotcha.
job.
She just wanted to make sure the approved amount was for the full 64.
Okay, so we need a motion to approve, paying sewer specialty services $57,002.20.
So,
Is there a motion? We have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Stop it. Okay. Jim, anything else?
The Boulevard Pumping Station, they have started some demolition work there, which is good because 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, we had a pump go down there. We put in our final replacement pump. The replacement pump did not work. We cobbed together the original pump that didn't work, and we're running by a shoestring there. Everything's good now, and hopefully within a couple months, the new pump station will be up and running.
What's the completion date?
I don't know if there is a completion date. I would estimate September-ish, somewhere in that ballpark. I don't know how many of you heard about the fourth and only pump station with the rain last Sunday.
Yeah.
Do you have that picture? That was our fourth and only pump station during the rain event. We had 30 some inches of water in there. The pump station quit. We had to bring in a temporary bypass pump. Maybe a third of the electronic controls and motors that were inside the building got wet. We dried it out for a day, day and a half, and turned it on, and it ran, believe it or not. But all those parts that got wet were definitely compromised. So I'm working with Envirop to get us replacement parts for all those things. We're gonna turn it into insurance. I'm guessing until this is all said and done, between overtime, rental pumps, electrician's time, parts, $30,000 easy. But hopefully it'll be an insurance claim.
Did I miss something? No, I don't know if I missed something. Good. All right, so we're gonna file the claim once we get all the information in.
Correct.
All right.
Are you gonna let Tom Berkshire know about that?
I can, yeah.
He has forms, you know,
Yeah.
so it wouldn't hurt. I
Yeah.
mean, if that's the only damage, no, we don't qualify, but. you
Yeah,
know,
other than that,
He should at
really
least be
didn't have any
notified.
other damage. Yeah, 'cause I talked to him the day after the event, and I told him, I said, the only damage we had was our pump station, there was no other major damage. The pool survived,
Amazing that that's all the damage.
none
we
of
had.
the roads got tore up, you know.
Okay. West Lawn Interceptor, anything new there?
That CFA meeting in May got kicked to July, which will now get kicked further down the road because there's no approved budget for them to use to spend money.
Maybe one other thing before we get out of sewers, we had discussed briefly.
No pun intended.
Before we get out of the sewer.
We had discussed briefly at an earlier meeting that there's a manhole in Woodland Road where the Berkshire pump station goes to gravity, there's a force main ends, and there's some issues in there, and when it's pumping, it's spraying sewage against the wall of the manhole, which will over time erode it. I've gotten 2 quotations, one from Slough and one from Matt Barrasso. Slough is $50,000 and Barrasso is $42,675. Is it urgent? Yeah. Does it have to be done now?
What would the project be?
This would be an emergency manhole replacement. Slough is our emergency contractor, but Barrasso came to look at it, and Jim would like me to, and I can get a 3rd quote too.
So one would still be spraying in the new
As
manhole?
we speak, it's spraying right now.
Yeah, but if you put a new manhole in, one would just spray on the new manhole instead of the old?
No, part of the process would be to replace the incoming pipe. There'd be a little more to it than a manhole, but, yeah, it would fix the problem.
That, how about the Skater Road renovation, any effect on that?
Not directly, indirectly.
We were going back as far as.
Yeah.
So are you looking to do this?
I guess what I'd like to say is, this would be unbudgeted funds, not to exceed $50,000.
Is this an emergency?
You could consider it an emergency.
The only reason we didn't just give it the slab was we both felt the number was high. And we wanted to get, and then we figured if we're not gonna use emergency contractor designated, then we should follow the 3-quote emergency basis.
So you have another quote out there yet?
I gotta get one more.
One more, just to follow that protocol.
So is it a recommendation of the group to get that 3rd quote? Once we get the lowest quote, go ahead and get the work done?
Not to exceed 50,000.
Not $50,000. Anybody wanna make that motion? Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the work pending the 3rd bid to come in, not to exceed the emergency repair on the manhole on Woodland Road, not to exceed $50,000. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
One more question, Jim. Is there anything in our stock contract that says it's exclusive?
No.
I can forward it to you. I have it.
Just want to make sure we're not breaching it.
It's not.
If we're taking the time to get through quotes, I couldn't you then argue it's not an emergency repair?
Then we want to bid it.
You don't have that.
I prefer it to be an emergency if you.
It has to be an emergency, you don't have the time to go out and bid all that to get this fixed. We don't wanna have that collapse.
So just make sure we're not
That section
breaking
of
a
road's
contract
closed.
with the carrier and we'll go from there.
I'll send you the Slough contract.
Streets? I could read through this, I mean, obviously we awarded that to all still. We had a recommendation to make a payment, correct?
Yes.
To
payment.
Construction Master Services
Yes.
for $727,967.99 for payment application number 3. I'll go ahead and make that motion.
Second.
All those in favor? Oh, or any opposed, I'm sorry. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? PennDOT State Hill improvements, anything new there?
You get a copy of, who's that from? We had the relocation of the Western Berks / Wyomissing Borough water meter pits. Some minor movement on it, nothing major.
So the Cambridge Avenue stream work is out to bid. Anything else?
Well, just on that water meter pit, since there's 4 currently, PA American owns 1, we have 1, Western Berks has one or two, or one, and then there's the mystery one that nobody really knows.
Well, I was gonna get, should we contact, I forget his name, the engineer, PA American?
Jeff Jessel?
No, PA American.
That's the worst with Western Berks.
I forget his name.
Craig Dowers.
Craig Dowers and say, hey, are you guys still planning on they were gonna abandon those 2 meter pits and replace the pipe? Contact them, see where they're at with
Okay. Nothing new on the Cambridge Avenue stream work then?
That's out the bid.
Or sign that, right? Iverson Creek pedestrian bridge,
Also out the bid.
same thing. The administration police department study, need study.
So I think at the last finance committee meeting, we talked about revisiting the Olson study to look at the options analysis for 1 and 2 and 3. So the infrastructure committee should have gotten a copy of this as well as the addendum, the 1-page addendum. So I guess
You say
discuss.
you did send us, did email us.
Yeah. I mean, I think at this point, we're obviously waiting to see what's happening at the Public Works. But this is something we have to keep in mind depending on what that number comes in. We don't know where we stand with that number. But yeah, it was me that said, let's review this because quite frankly, it's getting to be long in the tooth and I'm forgetting what we talked about already. So obviously, we can sit back, everybody on committee can review this. But I guess we're sort of in a wait and see position until we get to the Public Works building.
And here's there were costs, associated with looking at those options.
Right. Yep, it was $6 million.
Okay.
Anybody have any questions on that? It's now, remember we have it, I'm talking to myself, so that when I think about a thing, we already talked about it, I don't have to re-talk about it. Okay. Public Works Garage, that's out to bid.
Bids open Wednesday, August 16th, which would be the Wednesday before the August infrastructure meeting.
Okay. Tree department bucket replacement.
As we were looking at vehicle budgets for next year and 5-year, we've gone through this before. The bucket truck, to order a bucket truck is a 2-year lead time, 23 to 25 month business. The truck is $280,000. And to take delivery in 2026, we would need to order it this year. And not budget it till 2026, which we've gone through before. With one of the other trucks, and I guess fires, I understand the fire truck's the same kind of situation.
So there's no down payment, nothing that you have to do?
I'm not aware of any down payment, but I do know that this is a price, but 2 years from now, they could say, hey, we need another $5,000. You know, they can't commit to this as an exact price.
Well, it's at least reasonable.
It's reasonably close.
Well, we need to put like a portion of it into the 2024 budget, reserve for it in the 2025 budget, so we have enough money in 2026 to pay it. So I guess the question is, do you want to, when are you looking to place?
I would like to order it in the next month or so.
So it's not a budgeted item, but it doesn't need to be budgeted because there's no payment. So we would need to start putting reserve dollars aside for it in 24, which we can do when we do budget for this year, and then additional funds in 25. So it's just a question.
Right. Okay.
How much money is it?
280.
280. So is it, we have to vote on something that we don't need to vote on to go ahead and order the truck?
We have been authorizing these acquisitions of vehicles, is that correct?
We did it one other time for a dump truck, and I just heard a council,
Same
I
thing.
believe they're doing it with the fire, isn't there a fire truck issue like this?
Well-
Get a motion from this committee, and then finance has to start the process.
Anybody wanna make a motion to go ahead and start the process of ordering a bucket truck for the,
Yeah, you're just recommending the council to
Right.
approve it, next council meeting.
right,
And that's within your time frame.
Yeah, yeah, if it was August, where we at, August council, that would be
Yeah.
fine.
and do we have
I'll
a
make a
motion?
motion, subject to finances.
Yeah, I mean, the finances are not gonna get involved.
Yeah, we have a
until
motion. We have a
budget
second?
time.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? You guys have it. Fun. The Hewitt House lease.
So that lease, will come up for renewal at the end of September. We had previously discussed having a rental appraisal done of the property, which Tom Belair's told me costs $500. Just to determine if the current $1,600 a month rent is fair market value, which it likely is not. So, if we're gonna make any changes to the lease, we need to do that relatively soon to get it to her before it renews.
Yeah, we waited too long last time.
Yeah.
So we need to make a recommendation to have Tom Bellairs.
I would say to keep things moving, make a recommendation to have a rental appraisal performed of the property and set the rent per month to whatever is recommended in that appraisal. I mean, that at least gives us the ability to go back to the current tenant, negotiate as to, this is what your rent's going up to, do you wanna pay that or not?
Must we do that in order to increase the rent?
No, but you have a justification when you go to the tenant.
Yeah, I don't,
This is why we came up with this number.
And we don't know what the number should be.
No, we
Yeah.
didn't pull it out of the air.
16 doesn't sound bad.
Well, it's cheap,
You
that's
can't get anything for that.
much less than a house more.
But
Yeah, it's not, I'm guessing it's not.
you think that's low?
Really?
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah,
that's
but
my
we need,
point.
but we need an appraisal to say what it should be.
If you told her it's $500.
I think that same price has been for the past 3 years.
If you told her it's less than $1.
alright, so we need a motion to go ahead and start the, appraisal process to get the rental agreement. Anyone make that motion?
I'll make it.
Motion. Second? I'll second it. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Now, we have the right to, if they come back and say it's $2,600, to not charge $2,600 if we wish.
You can charge whatever you want, it's the borough's property, you can charge $1.
Yeah, I guess.
That's a unique, it's a very unique spot.
I don't
We
know.
need to update it.
It gives us the ability to negotiate. All right, any old business?
I would just like as a friendly reminder, we talked about holding the August infrastructure meeting at the fire station to allow for a tour. Along those lines, Jim and I were just talking about maybe doing a joint council infrastructure meeting on the bid opening date for the Public Works Garage project. That way, that project can potentially move forward depending on what the bids are. Said the August infrastructure meeting.
This is special,
Well,
special
it's
meeting.
prob- you're gonna have to, you're gonna have to go to the next borough council meeting.
She's saying
No,
have
it's
a
not-
special,
it's not-
Well, you
have
will have
a
a
special
special
meeting that
council.
day.
Joint combined infrastructure council
A
meeting,
special meeting.
just to deal with that.
Is that the working agenda?
Sorry?
Wednesday the 16th is the bid opening.
I mean, the question is, do you wanna do it that day, or do you wanna wait till the following Monday, which would be the normal regularly scheduled infrastructure meeting, that you could just do a joint infrastructure?
Well, we're only gonna be finding out about it on the 16th, right? And it doesn't make sense to at least take a
Wait till
couple
Monday.
days to think about
Yeah,
it,
so you need to find out whether
feel
it's
it
a
out.
qualified bid or something.
21st, I think it is.
21st is the Monday infrastructure
Is
meeting.
that the one you're not gonna be at, Steve?
I won't be there.
No, I'll be here at that one. Well, for a little bit of it. Can we start it earlier, maybe? Yeah, we'll talk about
We're
that.
fine with that.
Well, if we're gonna do a special council meeting, we'll do that earlier with the infrastructure. Like 11,
I'm fine with that.
and just do the infrastructure, just do the rest of the infrastructure meeting.
Could we advertise them for the same time, that way they just roll?
Yes.
Let's do it at 11 o'clock, I have.
August, right?
I'm sorry?
August?
Yes, at the fire
21st.
station.
August 21st.
August.
At the fire station.
You're gonna let us know about that.
Get
I
that in
think
your-
when your agenda goes out.
Yeah.
Editing in my schedule, right? Firehouse.
That's on the 21st, right?
Okay. Any other old business? Any new business being brought in front of the infrastructure committee?
Under new business, and this doesn't require any discussion or voting or anything, so I'm not gonna amend the agenda for information purposes. I was in contact with Betsy Heilman, the tax collector, a couple times over the past couple days, and she wanted council to be aware that there is probably a newspaper article coming out sometime this week or next week indicating that the county is going to be entering into a program where municipalities can sign on and start accepting credit cards as part of a tax, the ability for tax collectors to collect taxes. And she wanted the council to know that in case there were any questions, so that they're not, according to her, she didn't want it to be, you read it in the newspaper for the first time. She's looking into it, apparently she sent me the documentation, there's no cost to the borough to do it. The only thing she would have to do is set up a separate bank account. I'm not really sure why, but their recommendation is that she would flush the dollars from a special bank account that would put that into her general fund. And she just wanted everyone to be aware of that. It's not a commitment, but at some point in time, she will be asking the council to consider whether we want to sign up for the
Does she
program.
still collect the taxes, or does the county?
She collects the taxes directly with, the borough would enter into an agreement with a company, I forgot the name of it.
Processing.
It's, the county's entering into an agreement on the behalf of the municipalities, and the municipalities will have the option to jump in on that contract. And it's with a company, I wanna say Agistics, but that's not it. It's
I would have.
So we're not gonna pay the 3% processing
No.
fee or anything?
The person who
Would pay the extra.
the person who is using the service
Using the,
gets
so the
charged
credit card payer
2.1%.
has to pay the extra, has to pay that.
So it doesn't cost the borough anything,
2.1.
other than, I think it's 2.1%. But the person using the credit card would pay it.
Okay.
And the only thing Betsy would do is she would have to create an account and she'd be transferring the dollars based on that. So it's for information purposes only, but she didn't want you to read it in the paper and then have questions.
Fair enough. Any other new business for the good of the group?